Hi, this is Brian Russell with Streamside Solutions. This video is going to walk you through the steps of initial deployment using just IT resources. Overview of this is we're going to deploy the software using the installer, and after that it will kick off into a setup wizard, which will go step by step into some of the basic connections and settings prior to starting for the first time after install. And then I'll show you how to verify the event provider settings and that you're getting data back from that. The same goes with device interface. And finally, setting some of the IT related settings and parameters before it's handed off to the HVAC facilities personnel to do equipment mapping. The other things are SMTP settings for notifications, setting your poll period, and adding users. So really, this can go pretty quickly. It's pretty much IT related. You know, anybody with IT skills can step through these and get the software into a state where it's at least communicating with both sides of the interface. On the device side, depending on what you're using and what your network layout is, there may be additional steps in opening up firewalls to allow communications with that. And we'll have different videos for those advanced scenarios, but for this case we're going to just do a simple scenario connecting to Dean Evans SQL database for the event provider and BACnet IP interface on a subnet that's where the server is on the same subnet as the BACnet devices. And typical time for this is anywhere between 15 minutes and an hour, depending on what steps you may have to reconcile when you're going through the setup. So let's get started. Okay, now that we've got all the prerequisites installed and ready to go, we're going to start the Events2HVAC installation. So I've downloaded the latest version and I'm going to run this now. You want to make sure you have all of your connections to your event provider before you start, and your license if you have it. If you don't have it, there is a demo license you can use to get you through the setup wizard. So we're on the server, so we're going to do a client server installation. The other one is for a remote client deployment. So client server, and we're going to install a fresh database. So this is where you have to have the SQL server already installed, and we're going to create the Events2HVAC database locally. What event provider will you be using? This is where you select what's in your license. We're going to use Dean Evans in this install, and select which device interfaces you'll be using. And this is where you're going to be, which interface you're going to be connecting to your HVAC. So we're going to go with BACnet IP. And then this is just a summary of what's being installed. You can just verify that Dean Evans and BACnet IP is getting installed, and I'm also creating a database. Next. And it's asking me if I really do want to create a database, because this will erase any existing database that you've created already. And here's where I select the instance name of the database. So since we installed locally and using a SQL Express instance, this should work fine. If it was remote, you would put in the remote host name here and what instance name here. And we're going to use the default port. If you had a non-standard port, you would select this and enter it here. And we're going to connect with Windows authentication for right now. Okay, so we got a connection test successful. If this did not work, then you would need to go back to your SQL Management Studio and figure out why it's not connecting to the master database. Okay, the software's installed. I want to make sure I'm running the Events2HVAC setup wizard after this. The setup wizard will go through a series of basic checks for connections, and if you fail any of the steps, you'll need to resolve those before you continue the setup wizard. So I'm going to step through each one individually until I get a failure and then correct it. Okay, here's where it's trying to connect to the database. It did connect. If it didn't here, you can modify the settings and then change your local connection string here. There's no updates to the schema since this is a first install. Here's the default user login password, admin. If you change that, you'll have to manually enter your user and password here. Since there's no license on a first install, we're going to either install a demo license or the real license that you received. If you go to load new license, if you look in the root directory of the application, you'll see there's a demo license in there, and that's just a 10-room license. If you don't have a license from us yet, you can install this to get you through the setup wizard. Since I do have a license, I'm going to go back to this this path here. Oops. And I can close that after it's successful. Retry. License is okay. So the next step is probably where you're going to fail also, is your event provider connection. We're connecting to Dean Evans, so I need to modify those settings. I'm using SQL Direct, and this is the correct database and instance for me, except the username is password is wrong. Okay, should be good there. Then next. Okay, here's where it is checking to see if the service is started. Since this is the first time this isn't started, so we're going to start it. And it did start. If it failed to start, and the error shown up here isn't obvious, you'll need to go to the event log or the application log file, and that's located in the application root directory as shown here. And the Events2HVAC underscore service is a text log file that will indicate why the service failed to start. So moving on to the next step. Keep going. Okay, so got through everything successfully. If you didn't get through the setup wizard successfully, you'll need to resolve the issue and rerun it until you do. Alright, now we're logging into the client, and I'm going to use the admin default password for now. So the first thing I'm going to check is go to the events menu. This is the event provider connection and settings, and there's our connection string that we previously set. There may be some others set up depending on which event provider you use. Some additional setup in here. So for Dean Evans, I want to make sure I've got all the statuses, event statuses from their database, and I'm going to use the default here. If you can select different event statuses to flow through to HVAC equipment here, and I'm going to use just the defaults. And I can verify that I'm talking to Dean Evans by going to the room list, making sure you've got your Dean Evans rooms here. Hitting rebuild will go out and requery those from the database. The event list will show you raw events coming back from Dean Evans. Since this is a first install, we don't have any assigned rooms, so we're going to select all rooms from Dean Evans and any status. So that should show you all the raw events coming back from Dean Evans for the selected date. And you can do the same thing with the calendar. It's just a different view of the data. So our connection to Dean Evans is good. We're reading data, so that side of the interface should be ready to go. The other side is the device interface, and we installed BACnet IP, so I can go to the options here, and on your real license you shouldn't be in demo mode here on BACnet, so you should see two green boxes here. If you don't, then there's something wrong with the BACnet key that was embedded in your license. The other thing to note on BACnet specifically is you want to make sure the device ID for this client does not conflict with any device IDs on your existing BACnet network. And here's where you would change that. So the test, if your server is on the same subnet as your BACnet network, you should see all your devices show up here. If you don't, and you only see one device, which is this device, 799, then either the firewall on the server is blocking BACnet traffic, or your BACnet network is on a different subnet, and you'll have to take additional steps that I'm not including in the scope of this video to configure BACnet communications. But for this simple case, we're on the same subnet. I can see devices, and they're showing up with data. So we're good to go on both sides of the interface now, the event provider, Dean Evans, and BACnet. Okay, to recap, we've installed the software, we've verified communication with the event provider, and we're receiving data back from that. We've verified communications with the BACnet device interface, and we can see devices on our network. The Windows service is running, so everything's ready for the next step and the next video, which is equipment zone configuration and the mapping of rooms and actions to each zone you want to control. Thanks for watching.